I mean, this book itself, it's not The Boys. It's not really a cynical adventure. It's really about two friends finding each other again and getting a second chance to get it right. The holy trifecta of films that influence this are like The Three Amigos,
Mm.
Tropic Thunder, and of course Galaxy Quest. Where the creators of this thing go on an adventure like the kind that they would tell in their stories. And I just love
Hmm.
all those movies. I don't know. It's just an idea that it just never went away, and was always thinking about it. So yeah, it wasn't too hard to put that together for me, and it was pretty well formed in my head.
Do you know the way to San Jose? Bum, 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 bum. Welcome back to Direct Edition, a place to have conversations with artists and creators about the work that they create and the influences that inspire them. My name's Dave, and today I've got a great guest. That guest is Steve Skroce. Steve Skroce is a fantastic comic creator, an artist, a writer, and also a person that worked in movies for a decade, working on every single Matrix movie with the Wachowskis, including all of their other movies for the most part. Just a fantastic overall creator and a really nice person. Today, we're talking about his new book coming out from Image Comics and Skybound on September 2nd. That's Tales of Wonder. I've read it a couple of times. It was a fun ride. If you like his books like his creator owned, if you like his creator owned books like Post Americana and Maestros, you're going to really dig this book. And it's got a little bit of comics history in there with some parody. We talk a bit about that and the influences behind that. And he cites a few movies like Three Amigos, Galaxy Quest, and Tropic Thunder. That kind of humor is all over the pages, and his art is fantastic. And we talk a little bit about the evolution of his art and the style change from the 90s to now, which includes that stint in Hollywood working in the movies where he met his good friend Geof Darrow, great friend of the podcast. Much like Geof, Steve is a great artist and a very nice person who's got a lot of history in this medium and as well in Hollywood. So he shares a couple of stories about that, including one about a movie that I never knew was supposed to exist, George Miller's Justice League of America. Tales of Wonder will be at your local comic book store September 2nd, so you have plenty of time to know that issue's coming out and pick it up at your LCS. So without further ado, why don't we get to my chat with Steve Skroce? Welcome, friends. Today, I am bringing you a great chat with Canadian, a neighbor to the north. He is responsible for creator-owned series like Maestros and Pan Americana. He's done work at Marvel with Clobber in Time, Wolverine, Amazing Spider-Man, going back to the 90s to X-Men, and worked with the Wachowskis on all four Matrix movies. Also, Speed Racer, V for Vendetta, iRobot, and did the comic Ecto Kid. But we're talking about Steve Skroce's brand new book coming from Image Comics, Tales of Wonder, dropping September 2nd, 2026. Steve, good afternoon, good morning.
Hi, good to see you, Dave.
Good to see you too. Are you in Eastern or Western Canada or Central Canada?
Western Canada. I'm in Vancouver.
Oh, cool. So I'm
So,
just down I-5 in Tacoma.
yeah, you're a 30-hour drive from me. And then,
I do love BC. I think it's one of the most beautiful places, if not the most beautiful place in North America. So.
yeah, I like it a lot. I mean, we don't, we vacation in our own province these days. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of good comic creators up there. I mean, I think of, Kari Andrews is up there. I know Chip Zdarsky spends at least summers in BC.
Oh, he does? I don't know that.
Yeah. I also forgot to mention, speaking of Canada, the series that put you on the map for me personally was We Stand on Guard with Brian K. Vaughan, which, I remember reading that when it came out, and it's a fantastic series.
Yeah, 10-year anniversary this year.
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, that was yeah, I'd left comics behind for like 10 years doing movies, and I was really lucky to be able to kind of return to comics with Brian on that book. A real career high point.
Yeah,
really proud of that one.
It was a fantastic one. It's also part of like, I mean, if we're talking about just that series and Pan Americana, it's definitely they kind of fit together in the same world of what you might think of a I don't know, like an apocalyptic society, but when you wrote it, couldn't really see that we were kind of headed that way.
A little bit. I mean, Post Americana is sort of the trashy cousin to We Stand
Yeah.
on Guard. You know what I mean? We like to, we didn't meditate on the nature of war in quite a serious way with Post Americana, but I got my sort of post-apocalyptic genre tropes out of me finally with that book.
But I mean, well, we don't have to go into the sadness of how some of the stuff is just coming true. But I mean, that's science fiction. It's one of those things that I talk about often.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, we did that book. It's supposed to take 100 years in the future. In 100 years, it's like we're like, well, anything can happen in 100 years. Yeah, we weren't expecting there to be a hostile relationship 10 years later. That it's like these are all. I don't feel that from my Americans that I know, or just from Americans in general. It's less, it's all above the civilian pay grade. I feel a lot of that stuff is happening.
Right. It's governmental and it's media. It's those two things that kind of really reflect that more than the people themselves. I did want to ask, kind of like going into your first experience with comics growing up. Like I think we're a couple years apart, not too far apart, but what was your first experience with bringing comics into your life, and the first kind of stories and or maybe the first artist that really spoke to you as a young person?
Well, it did kind of all start with like, the Ralph Bakshi Spider-Man cartoon and like the reruns of that, and then reruns of the old Batman live action 1966 show, and those were and those kind of cartoons kind of led me to, there was a comic book club at my school, and I'm like in the second grade, and I have some crappy old beat up Gold Key Star Trek comic, and I wander into this comic book club, and it's just like, I should have just tattooed like worthless noob on my head with this Gold Key Star Trek comic, and I don't remember exactly, but I remember getting somehow trading, or maybe I paid some lunch money. I got a amazing Spider-Man comic that had this really badass cover where Spidey's looking super muscular, and it's at a museum. Maybe he's flinging a giant dinosaur vertebrae at somebody. I can't remember who did the cover, Marshall something. Anyway, that was sort of where it began. Something Marshall, last name or first name, I can't remember. I could be totally wrong. But that was sort of the beginning of it. And then after that, I learned a little bit about the culture. I found out where a couple comic book stores were in my neighborhood, and I got my mom to take me to some of those, and that's where that began. And I got in right as things were popping there in the 80s. You know what I mean? It was like, I got like my what number Daredevil is it, where he's got the size and his face is in shadow and all the arrows are coming at him? Is it 189?
Oh,
anyway, it was one of Frank Miller's first. And I'm buying that like off the rack at the store. You know what I mean? So like, I was kind of, my childhood was just like, what was great during that era was like, these types of stories you could only get at Marvel. You could only get that Marvel feeling from a Marvel comic, that scale of action, that kind of drama and stuff just wasn't anywhere else. You couldn't see it on an episode of Airwolf, just didn't do it, And so I think that was a very special time to be a comic book reader. And starting out in those 80s, and led all the way up to the 90s, and pretty much the only thing I ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
Now I want to become a hedge fund manager, but up until now, that was it.
I don't know.
But it's too late for me, Dave.
Yeah, I don't know. I might be too late for that.
No one wants my financial advice now.
It's funny because before you got into comics and Marvel, which would be the mid 90s, were you doing any self-published? Were you part of any, like, was there a scene up there? I mean, I think of some of the the one guy that pops into my head from, at least I think he's around Western Canada, is Colin Upton. But was there any self-publishing or, a little bit of a scene in where you were comics wise?
No, I mean there probably was, but I absolutely had no community and kind of still don't.
Hmm.
I feel like I'm out here on my own. There was, um, yeah, I didn't really know anybody. There was no scenes, but there was this boom at Marvel, and
Hmm.
I was like from the age of 13 sending Xerox. My mom worked at a school, and so I would have access to Xerox copies. So I was sending copies like twice a month for since I was 13 all the way up until I got hired at 18. So it's like 5 years. And the editors there, Mark Carl Potts, sent me a Xerox book on screen on cinematography, and so
Hmm.
there was little bits of help along the way that kept me going. And then I actually went to the San Diego Con in like '92 or '93, and that kind of handed out my little packets. You don't do that. I mean, that's but now it's all on the internet. But back in those days, you would
Sure.
have to have Xeroxes, and you would have things to hand out with your name and phone number on it, and you would go for portfolio reviews and all that. Yeah, and that led to my first job at Marvel, which was this thing called Ecto Kid. Clive Barker was getting into comics, the boom, right? And he had come up with 4 different concepts. And what's crazy about Ecto Kid was this book led also to this unplanned movie career that I had because the writers of Ecto Kid were the Wachowskis, who went on to make The Matrix, and they were nice enough to sort of uh, let me, you know, drag me along on their coattails and do storyboards for their films. Yeah, so yeah, a lot
Yeah,
happened for me out of that one gig.
right, right. I mean, and I hear this every once in a while. It's a kind of a similar thing. It's just the one thing leads to an entire career, which obviously you work hard to do all of these things, and it's not like you were just handed everything, but it's just the one door open, and it's your job to go through that door and keep opening more doors.
Yeah, in the creative industries, in movies and like especially in comics, you hear people talk about catching waves. And as I got older,
Hmm.
I kind of feel that because you kind of feel like that's what you're doing as an artist. You're like when you're a surfer, you catch a good wave, you're out in the water watching, and that's kind of what as a cartoonist, you're looking for a path for yourself, right? And so yeah, you got to, and it's not
Hmm.
like the trajectory isn't always traditional you can't really compare it to like, becoming an economist or somebody, you know what I mean? Those sort of, they're sort of markers you're hitting in those types of industries that, it's a little more organic in comics. Like I said, it's like a chance meeting with somebody leads to this gig or that gig that can put you on the map. Or like even the We Stand on Guard, I met Brian because I was at a
Hmm.
screening in LA for Jupiter Ascending that he had been invited to. And, we got it started talking because we're the two comic book guys there.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's part of the creative life is you've got to kind of, yeah, get your oars in the water and yeah, look for, try and be ready in case that wave comes your way, because they don't happen all the time, but they will. I think if you're out there all the time working, they happen. You see that with like when I left movies, the other contemporary artists. I didn't do comics for 10 years, but yeah, they all the guys that were around, they all went on to great things, and they have long runs and on their shelf of their work, and so yeah, so they can come in different forms, I guess.
I did want to ask just one more on the Marvel years. I mean, when you came in, I wasn't really reading it much anymore. It was like right as I was about to graduate high school. I left comics for like 3 years because of what ended up happening, the implosion, the image thing, and all that. But I look at
Sure.
your style then, and it's like you and Joe Madureira and Roger Cruz. Like there was definitely that kind of manga anime style that was part of Marvel. But then fast forwarding, like your style change. Where does your style change come from? Because if you look at your work from We Stand on Guard to now, and you go back and look at the early stuff, it's almost a completely different person style wise. Is that fair to say also?
Well, yeah, without a doubt. And you would definitely have to give credit to my meeting and working with Geof Darrow for that. Because when I started, like, again, like there's no internet. I'm 53, so there's no internet. I have no community.
Mm-hmm.
Like my whole world is I've got some paper, a pencil, and I've got my comic book collection. And that's what's teaching me everything. So I didn't know about it. So when the Wachowskis first hired me, I think they hired me mostly because they were young too. They just liked me.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to bring people with, around. They wanted to have people around them that they thought gave them a good vibe or whatever. And I guess they saw enough talent in me, but I had no real fundamental skills. Like you're saying, I was sort of practicing the. It was like how I was drawing in those days was just kind of a hodgepodge or whatever those trendy styles were. And you can actually see it over the course of my Spider-Man issues, because when I started Spider-Man, I was kind of in that, using kind of the popular tropes at the time. I'm like 20 years old or something. And then I go and get in the first batch of Matrix storyboards are like that too. But then I get into a room with Darrow and he starts just coming over my shoulder and say, "Oh, can I show you this?" It's like fundamental drawing stuff that I hadn't really had. And all stuff that he kind of learned at Hanna-Barbera. And then that information kind of transformed the way I draw. Suddenly I was, drawing in perspective all the time. And I think when you do that, it changes how you see shapes. And, working with the Wachowskis, because at the beginning, the other thing they really liked me is they wanted someone who would just do what they say in a lot of ways, rather than like working with a seasoned storyboard artist who's going to bring his own thing to it. They had, especially for that first movie, they had very specific things they wanted to accomplish, and they could go, "Steve, put this here in the frame, put this there in the frame," and I would do that. But that was also my film school. I learned visual storytelling through them in a way that I had, before that I had my visual storytelling skills were coming from just me, soaking up what I had read through other comics. And a lot of them were kind of like I don't want to say bad now because I have a lot of affection for that era, like my ideas and feelings towards art have changed. I used to be more of an art snob. And now, like, I don't know if I really care about your draftsmanship so much. Like, I remember I used to, how do you want to say, like, measure myself against, well, I can do that 3-point perspective. That guy can't. So I've got, I've got this over him. And now I just don't feel that way about art. I have little kids and we read Dogman, or younger. We've read Dogman. We've read Diary of Wimpy. We've read like all of Raina's books, and like, you just don't. I just connecting with people with your artwork isn't always about having these intense ability to wield these laborious drawing techniques, and so yeah, I don't know where I'm rambling about, but I'm just sort of like saying, it's changed a lot. It's evolved in that way. But I go back to some of my Spider-Man issues. I was looking. I've actually got one right here. I had, black and whites. These are drawn. I forget. This is issue 425 of Spidey. I remember I was like pretty impressed with myself actually, because I had this pretty. There's no high-tech tools. It's just pencils and rulers, and doing a monthly book in those days, you just got a sharpness to your drawing that I'm always trying to recreate.
When we think about the vehicle for the story that delivers the story, it can be anything. And talking about Dogman or like stuff that's aimed towards young people, like it's the vehicle for the story that really matters, that makes you really feel something. We have our art that we hold up to a certain echelon, and then we can look at the stuff that maybe not the greatest art, or maybe just that image era kind of art, but if the story gets delivered and you enjoy the story, then it did its job.
Yeah, for sure. And even the drawings, like, let's say, someone like Liefeld who gets picked on for his drawings and stuff like that. He's always got the feet or something. And, when I was younger, I would do that too. But at the same time, like, you think about what he really did as an artist. I mean, he's someone who he soaked up what he liked about comics. And then through him, he translated those emotions and put them on the page, and millions of kids and comic readers connected with that. I mean, you want to diminish what he did because, he doesn't I don't see the four planes of the nose on that drawing. You know what I mean? But he didn't really
Right.
need any of that, and neither did McFarlane. They had a certain amount of like, and that's not why I'm buying their comics for that. There's like a million other guys. If I want some really tightly rendered Dave Gibbons style art, I'll buy Watchmen or something that he does.
Mm-hmm.
When those guys kind of gave me something else, and I can't at my age now diminish that. You know what I mean? Like what kind of makes them great wasn't necessarily these slavishly complying to the skill set you're supposed to have, but it was them. It was how they
Yeah.
reacted to the art that they were absorbing is what connected me to their work as well. So it's hard for me not to call them greats, which they are too.
The energy that they were putting on the page was
Yeah.
unparalleled at that time. It's an energy thing. I mean,
Yeah,
I
it was
think
totally new. Yeah.
didn't want to assume, but like getting a master class of sharing a room with Geof and working day in and day out with him, like that I do this podcast is helps to talk about influences and what those influences mean and how they affect people, and like hearing you say that, and then also the Wachowskis, like all of that, you're sucking it up, you're and then you're, it's just nice to hear you say that, because coming out of the gate after your movie run with, We Stand on Guard, where I'm introduced to your work, I'm like, whoa, this is some great stuff. This is some energy from an artist that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, I was so
Yeah.
lucky to land that gig. It could have been, having gone, you're really restarting your career if you go away for that long. Like I had done some big things, X-Men, Spider-Man, but there's so many guys have done that, and so it was just super lucky to work on something that's special. And I look at all those projects as just big life experiences, and grateful for those, for the good ones, and even the bad ones I've had. I've had a
Sure.
couple weird gigs over the year. I remember I worked for this crazy rich guy who's passed away now, but this guy was super rich in Vancouver, and he came to his mansion, and he was like, I was like this guy was kind of a Gordon Gekko guy. He made all this money, I don't know, breaking up companies, but he was super wealthy. At one point, he was dating Rose McGowan, and he was very proud of that, and he had to put her on the speakerphone. You know what I mean? Like, it was pretty. But this guy had come up with this story, but that's basically him, some other investment guy who got these like powers based on, I guess he suffered from fibromyalgia, like this guy had, and so he's got this fibromyalgia, can like shoot lightning bolts or something. Anyway, it was the worst thing I'd ever dealt on, but he paid me so much money, but it was so depressing. I would sit there and I must have done 100 pages of this book that no one will ever see. And it's definitely, for the amount of work I put into it, was the most money I've ever made for labor, but it was a nightmare. I just hated it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was so horrible. I like this. Maybe this guy wasn't such a great guy either. I remember reading somewhere after I had stopped working with him the next year, I looked him up online, and he had like ran over some poor woman's foot speeding away from a nightclub or something. I don't want to go into all the people, but sometimes I'm like, what I'm trying to say is I was associated with this like big famous thing, The Matrix, and this guy, I was like and he wants to he was seeing comics as a way to make a showbiz career for him, and so I was like the at this level person that would talk to him. He could pay me and I would interact with him, or like above my pay grade. I don't know if anyone would bother, but anyway,
it always seems
the mishaps.
And we don't have to name names like you said, but it always seems when somebody with a lot of money tries to get into comics because maybe they like comics as a kid and they hire all these people, those comics are not remembered. It's usually the fall of that company that is remembered more than the comics, or the artists that worked on the comics that went on to do great things afterwards, but it's never the comics.
Yeah, totally. Like CrossGen, right? Like, do we remember the great? I mean, they had tons of talent. Don't get me wrong; those guys are all fantastic. I mean, right across the board. But it's not easy to make a superhero universe. I mean, like that special thing that connects you to the characters or the story that you're creating. The creators, I don't think, are really in charge of that. Like
Yeah.
even our most famous film directors, when you really look at their film careers, like Spielberg, there's like a really big director will have 4 big hits that connect in a huge way, or 3,
Hmm.
or like Ridley Scott. And then you count up the misses that they're all working just as hard on. It's not like he'd lost his touch. It's just lining up what the masses are going to like with what the artist likes. I feel like it's an unplanned thing. You just got to
Yeah.
put your heart into it and hope and hope.
Oh, hello there. We'll get right back to the video. I want to let you know that I have a Patreon that supports both of my channels, Direct Edition and West Coast Davengers. For $5 a month, you can help contribute and support the channels. You get bonus videos from both channels. You get a chance to vote for a video that I record where I flip through a rare book. And every 2 months, you can take part in a private sale of stuff from my personal collection, my inventory, and my travels, stuff that is not available anywhere else, but it goes to you first, my friends. The link is in the description below. Direct Davengerinos, that's my Patreon, $5 a month. And now back to the video. And that's a great way to kind of bring in this new book, Tales of Wonder, which, I read the first issue twice and I had a lot of fun with it. And there's a little bit of everything in here. Like, I know the first issue is just kind of kicking into gear, but I see your passion for the comics industry overall in this first issue, and the things that you might not love about the comics industry, because you've been on both sides, the Hollywood side and the comic side.
Well, I think I love. It's kind of weird, but I think I love all of it. Like, and I love
Mm-hmm.
being like, so in issue 1 we meet kind of this uh the movie producer guy who's behind all the Wonder movies, the Wonder comics,
Mm-hmm.
because it's these characters, Stu and Jake, are the comic creators who created the books that this gigantic movie empire is built on. All characters, likenesses and stuff are completely coincidental, and so they build this thing. But I do throw some shade. We've got the producer character has this nice speech that's completely cynical about the comic book industry,
Yeah.
and like, but you will, like, later in the story, like, we get the counterpoint to that argument. I mean, this book itself, it's not the boys, it's not really a cynical adventure. It's really about 2 friends finding each other again and getting a second chance to get it right. I would say that in
Mm-hmm.
its creative DNA, like, the holy trifecta of films that influence this are like the Three Amigos, um,
Mm.
Tropic Thunder, and of course Galaxy Quest. Where the creators of this thing go on an adventure like the kind that they would tell in their stories. And I just love
Mm-hmm.
all those movies, and I just thought, like, how great would that? You see the rise of the comic book movie, and I don't know, it's just an idea that it just never went away, and I just was always thinking about it. So yeah, it wasn't too hard to put that together for me, and it was pretty well formed in my head at the beginning. And then at the same time, it's not really a unpacking of the comic book business in a serious way. I do a lot of spoofs and
Mm-hmm.
gags and stuff, but it's not really about Stan and Jack, only in so much that Tim Allen is Shatner in Galaxy Quest. Not really. He's kind of playing a fictional character that could have, maybe done the same job as those real life counterparts. So like
Yeah.
the things that they're going through, the characters are going through personally. I'm not really trying to do a one-to-one recreation of these real people. These are a lot of these emotions and stuff that they're talking about have come from like my own personal experiences and maybe the falling outs that I had with creator friends. I mean, I had a creator friend once who, I told him an idea that this comic I was going. It wasn't even my idea. It was this writer I was wanting to work with, his idea. And then like 3
Mm-hmm.
weeks later, this guy comes back to me with it like it's his own idea with the same
Mm.
title and the whole deal. And that kind of and that event informs a lot of what happens in this story as well. There's this kind of like, I
Sure.
remember getting very angry about it, and kind of, you stole my girlfriend level of angry. And now as I'm older, it's like 15 years later or something, I wish it hadn't gone that way. I mean, it would have probably ended the relationship, friendship anyway. But I hate the idea of bad blood. I think now I would have just said, okay, you got to do this. Go with God. That's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
that you have creative friends so you can share ideas and bounce ideas off of. And once that happened, that part of it was over. But it gave me that, not so much I want to reconcile with this particular person, but like that sentiment just means a lot to me. Like I've always followed, creative collaborations, what makes them work, and when they fall apart, what happened. And so the inspiration for this story is to create a version of it that is wish fulfillment, where like they do get a second chance to get it right, and a story that makes you feel good at the end of it, and it's about the comics world that we all love.
The association with thinking about Stan and Jack, or but it's a kind of it's a thing in comics. I mean, you think about Bob Kane and Bill Finger, and you think about all of these things, and as comic fans, it's hard to not think about how comics can be like that. It's not always like that. It's not like that in a majority of it, but I also enjoyed your kind of like your parody or take on SDCC, and it made me laugh because I'm in a space where I'm a comics collector. I sell comics for a living, but I also love to support creators, and that one page, it's like page 6 or 7, really made me laugh because you hit the nose on the head.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we're talking about the cynical producer, and he sort of sees himself as the high priest of this nostalgia addiction. The convention is his temple, and they're all of his disciples. And yeah, that was a lot of fun to write. He's a fun character, and yeah, he comes back around later in the story. He's a big part of it as well. And yeah. So I definitely it pokes a lot of fun. What was really funny drawing that is realize, I can't draw any corporate characters. You know what I mean? If you're at a convention, you're going to see, everywhere you look, you're going to see a Deadpool or an Absolute Batman or some anime character. And so all of mine, everything's fake.
Sure.
Which I just think is funny. So I've got to like come up with these endless spoofs of things, because I can't have Superman walking around.
Right. But does that make it more fun for you?
I think it is, because you're forced to just put in little jokes constantly. I had to. There's another sequence later in the issue where I had to come up with some comic book awards. And like I used some real ones, and I was like, what's that going to be? So I came up with something called what did I call it? The big I can't even forget, but big squiddy or something. Anyway, it's just a big pen nib on the end of this bottle.
Right.
Anyway, it's just fun to go back and pull that apart. We go back and we do a flashback to the Wonder Comics office in the 70s. And we get to meet some characters there, and in a way, I get to be like Dan Klaus and Dan Poussey, which is not as mean,
Yeah.
But the comics is such a ripe world for that, though. Like comics are such a big pop culture, but we haven't really exploited the characters. The people who make it are such characters too, and we haven't really made them into icons yet, or archetypes. I mean, we've got the comic book guy from The Simpsons, but there's so many other ones now, and fan culture is so huge at this point. With the fan expos everywhere and these massive conventions, that I don't know. It seemed ripe to. It seemed like that fruit was ready to get picked. So I tried to put a lot of that in my book.
Yeah, because you're speaking to comics readers with your comics, and the people that will get the parody, the spoof, that kind of idea, or just the story that, you're speaking to the people that will understand it the most. And it's
I think I feel like they'll get the jokes.
I did want to ask, and I know they're not the same characters, but in the first issue of Post Americana, I was just rereading it yesterday. Does this fall into the same universe? Is Tales of Wonder take place before?
Oh, because I use Wonder Comics.
Yeah,
it could, but like in that book, I gave the sole authorship of Wonder to some Japanese guy, Yakamoto, or I can't remember the name I picked. So maybe he's the corporate guy that stole the credit or something in the future. But it wasn't specifically, but I did have to go back to. I did use a Wonder Comics or Wonder Entertainment in that, and I had to recycle that, and then you see a lot of Wonder characters in the background of this issue too, because I already designed them, and I needed someone some of them there, but I wouldn't say no. They're not the same universe. There's just a coincidence. Let's call it a coincidence,
Right.
with the Wonder title.
Okay.
Right.
Just curious about that because, I don't know what you're
thanks for
cooking.
reading Post Americana.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all
Yeah,
one. Everything I'm doing is one cohesive piece, like Stephen King.
Right?
Like all his
it's the
books kind of
understated thing of
inhabit
his
the
career.
same world. Right.
Yeah, I think it was Needful Things is the one where it kind of shows that a little bit more. I remember, at least that was the first time I noticed that King was kind of everything was part of the same world.
I thought it was mostly they do a lot of that in the Dark Tower books.
Right.
With Roland and everything. But I guess he
Not as
sprinkles
well
it out through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like even his car accident, he kind of, I forget which book he put that in. Maybe it is one of the Dark Tower books, but yeah, that was
I think,
what's his name? Reaching through and trying to kill him in the real world was that car accident where he was running and then gets hit by the van.
I'm not as familiar with the Dark Tower
books. It
books.
The 90s or 80s? Yeah. There's a lot, but yeah, I'm sure he's got a little of that in all of them.
Yeah,
he's
definitely. he's pretty talented.
And Joe Hill too. I like Joe.
Yes,
he is.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Sidebar about that. I didn't know that Joe Hill was Stephen King's son when I first read Lock and Key, and then my roommate told me,
wow.
and it blew my mind. I'm like, this makes so much sense.
It's just so funny because Joe Hill looks just like his dad. I mean, he even has he's got that beard that grows right up to his lip, I wonder if there's like a third son who's like, is like a blonde, he's like blonde hair, just likes to surf or something and doesn't like them.
I mean,
or is everybody a writer in the family?
King. Yeah, Owen King's a writer, but I don't know what he looks like. Yeah. But I had not seen a picture of Joe Hill when I got that first Lock and Key hardcover, and I read it. And then after that, I read all of Joe's books, and I was like, the apple didn't fall far from the tree at all.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
So getting back to Tales of Wonder, I did want to ask, I didn't look at the solicits. Is it a mini-series? Like how many issues are we getting?
It's a mini. We got 5 issues.
5 issues?
Yeah, 5 issues. And then that's conclude the first story, and we'll see if anyone wants more after that, I guess.
When did you switch from doing like traditional art to digital? Because I know you've been doing digital for a little while, right?
Right. I still do. What I'll do now, if I'm doing a cover or something, I'll draw it digitally, then print it out, and then trace use a light box and trace the drawing onto the board, ink it on the board that way. But it was really around 2013, I was doing movies, and you just couldn't keep up. Like, so much of a storyboard's job is about revision. I mean, you do a scene, then you get notes, and you change it, and you do that process happens over and over again. And so to sit there and be using real drawings that, when you do it that way, suddenly you're in arts and crafts class where you've got a glue stick and you're cutting stuff out of frames, and because sometimes the note will be like, oh, this should be 20% smaller in a frame. Like, suddenly, if you're working with traditional tools, that becomes a big problem to make that thing 20% smaller. But when it's digital, you can constantly mess with it. So just through that, and then I got used to it, and really the time saving of that, at that point, when I got back into comics, I'd been gone so long, I wasn't really aware of this original artwork industry that had popped up around comics, so, I didn't realize I was leaving money on the table when I do one of these books, or like a Spider-Man cover, any of that stuff. But I've since learned from my mistake, and I've learned that, working, digitally definitely has its shortcuts, but the great thing when you work traditionally, it's like you have less options. So you just you're never kind of get lost in all the choices that you're making, like sometimes like when you're drawing digitally, if you space out, you're relaxing and having fun, you might zoom in on a character in the background and spend way too much time, and then zoom out and go, oh, no one's ever going to see that detail I put into that. That's kind of the biggest problem I have is I limit the amount of zooming in I can do now sometimes, just so that I don't over add,
Well, it's funny because some of those pages in the first issue of Tales of Wonder, there is a lot of stuff going on in the background, specifically that one page that I cited where it's kind of running, the monologues running down about the Comic-Con.
Yeah. Oh, that one was a real bear to draw. Like I use a lot of montages are kind of a fun thing to do, but yeah, it's like the compositions of that and trying to make it all work clearly is like the most time consuming of anything. I might press pause on my montaging for a while after this series. We use it extensively in issue 3 because we kind of, it's only 5 issues. You've got a lot of characters,
Sure.
and you want to, and so I do some sort of spoof what if, and we kind of get to meet all the characters and learn about their backstories a little bit, because that was sort of, while this adventure kind of happens on the move, so you got to kind of sort of find ways to, weave in this exposition or sort of background details, things like that. It's a bit tricky.
Yeah, it moves. I would say it's like around the 15th or 14th page. The pace of the book immediately picks up as, the kind of plot to this is the heroes from the Wonder books come alive. They're real. And then all of a sudden it just goes 100 miles an hour.
Right. Totally. So the basic premise is, so these two guys had this comic, after World War II, they came home and they created their own comic book universe that, over the years became a cultural phenom and has ultimately led to the Wonder Comics cinematic universe and the giant monolithic corporation that Wonder has become. And then what we find out in the story is that, one of the two creators, they've had a falling out, and partially it's over. One of them says that all these characters are real, and they met them all back in World War II, where they had a big adventure. These heroes disappeared, and they used those adventures as inspiration for the comic book universe that followed. But now we'll find out later what happened to these characters, why they disappeared, where they've been, and why they're back now is a big part of issue 1 and 2 of Tales of Wonder.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I read this digitally, but is there a fold out spread page in there? It was tough for me to tell if
there is. Well, we see at the end where we see that, forget what pages are, but when we see the whole team together, and that's going to be a double page spread. And you also get to see Stu and Jake, who are old men, about 100 years old. They both get drafted into this adventure with these characters they think they created, and they get youngified. They get so they can are fit enough to go on this adventure, which is sort of fun.
It was a really fun read, and like I said, there's the parody aspect of it, but there's some truth to what we all know. Peeking behind the curtain of the comics industry, and there are certain things that, I think could use some improvement, or there could be people treating each other better in certain ways.
Sure. I mean, this book isn't specifically it's more about, both perspectives over the series are given their due. I tried to do that, these, I'm sort of not trying to, like I said before, not trying to make a one-to-one, conversation about, who did what, with the real world counterparts, because that's not really what it's about. But yeah, it's mostly, some satirical humor, gentle satirical humor in our industry. And it's mostly about the goodness that fandom brings than any bad things,
Yeah. There's always
things are just bad people. Yeah.
But I think overall, like, I don't know if did you go to San Diego this year? Were you there this year?
I didn't. I haven't been for, probably since 2005.
From what I heard from San Diego this year is like, it feels like there's a definite renewed energy in comics. You know, the movies, there's always going to be energy behind it, but comics specifically has felt a resurgence. And there's a lot, you know, having to do with what DC's doing, what Kirkman's doing at Skybound, what Daniel Warren Johnson's doing. Like, there's a lot of reasons for it.
Yeah, you got some great creators. I mean, that's just always blows me away about comics. It's just like the talent of the people in this industry is like, you know, evident. You
Mhm.
know, it's a real meritocracy too. You know, it's you know, I think if something is good, people will find it or notice it.
Feels like there's a lot more readers in the last year and change, maybe 2 years, than there has been in the last 6 years.
For sure. I think the absolute line is great. I think that I don't know, you got to keep these characters relevant, and you can't really break them. I mean, if you do one that's no good,
Mhm.
then we'll just forget about it. And our Wolverine didn't
Yeah.
have a nose for a little while. We just don't talk about that now. You know, just get over it.
Right, right, right. It's, you know, and the creator focused books, the creator owned books, you know, like yours or like, you know, Shaolin Cowboy with Jeff, like those can be whatever they want and whatever the creator wants them to be. And they can be whatever, they can tell whatever story. There's nothing that really depends on what happened in the past. And that's one of the reasons why I love the creator owned stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It's just direct vision, straight from the imagination of the creator. And yeah, and how many comics are, you know, so different and interesting. I mean, in that way, I think that's what they're so fresh, is that it's just straight from you, from a creator. You don't have this. You know, I remember I was saying when I was reading Marvels when I was a kid in the '80s, there was nothing else like it. Now you can get your Marvel fix a ton of different ways, right?
Hmm.
But back then it was just your long box and that was it.
Yeah.
And but I still feel like comics can deliver that. Like you're not going to get an experience like a Daniel Warren Johnson comic anywhere else except from him, or you know, all the other great guys who are putting out stuff.
Going back to your friendship with Jeff, and you know, I've talked to Jeff for hours. Did did you did he bring manga to your world? Is that something that he kind of introduced you to? Are you a manga fan,
Um,
like, or is it something you discovered
Push.
away from that?
I would say not specifically Darrow, just more like for me in the '90s, it was kind of like just kind of aping the other popular styles, and then actually getting to actually go to conventions in the '90s, which were a
Hmm.
different experience now. Where you would go and they used to have these dudes that would sell these bootleg videotapes
Mm.
of all kinds of anime or Japanese or Chinese kung fu movies, and
Hmm.
that's where, and then during that era, that was where I built my library and saw the most of that stuff that influenced what I do. Was getting access to you know, those movies that I don't know, you couldn't get anywhere else. You know,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, and specifically, yeah, and just following the. Then you would just get like art of books was the big. There was no Google back then, so you would
Yeah.
hunt down art of books. So you know, I got that art of the Street Fighter anime, which
Mm.
was something I poured over. You know, so I'm sure you can blame some of the big eyes I drew and then on Spider Man's. You know, on that.
Working with the Wachowskis over years and 4 Matrix movies, was there anything that, like, the process of how they worked and how you worked with them, like, is there any major changes that would take place where, you know, maybe just the way that you learn to storyboard or learn to do that design, like one of the any of the bigger skills you picked up or the things that you learned over just the course of those 4 movies specifically, because they are monumental and groundbreaking in every way, shape, and form.
Oh, absolutely. Working on pretty much every movie I've worked on. Even I would say there was this unmade Justice League film that George Miller was going to work on it. So I
Yeah.
got to work on that for 6 months. And he sort of runs his, you know, he does kind of like an educational seminar for you before you really begin working with him, where he sort of
Mm.
explains his process, and he kind of names things that didn't really have a name, where he would sit down and explain the escalating rhythms in an action sequence and how they should work, and how there should be a punch and a counter punch, and how everything needs to build, and how do you decide that this, you know, Superman or Wonder Woman smashing Superman in the head with a engine block, uh, how is that a bigger escalation than smashing him through a wall? And you would have these conversations about this stuff that were really enlightening. So that's something. So really, I would say the thing that film brought most to my work was just the ability to ask a lot more questions about the storytelling, ask questions of myself,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, just picking up the tools of working with these directors, understanding their choices, kind of helps me, when I'm ready to make my own choices, my own work. That's definitely part. Whereas like when I began drawing comics, it was more like figuring out just how to get this page done. And so the storytelling, I always joke about this close up of the eyeball. I used to do like when I'd get tired after drawing all these pages, like, I mean, there's got to be like a close up of X-Men's eye, like about a
Mm-hmm.
quarter size of the. I mean, I've done that so many times, but like you won't see that in my more recent work. I mean, in a way, it's kind of made me less fast because I'm always like, if the storytelling in that next panel isn't working in the comic, it just nags at me, and I can't really abandon. I have to fix it, which
Mm-hmm.
I think the early comic book self would have been like, ah, that's good enough. I mean, I got my anchor figure in the middle of the page, and I got like 5 little panels coming off of it. That's all you need. Um, but yeah, like being able to through working with them and this under just going through that process of like there's just these conversations of like what's working here in this shot, like everything's under revision,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the good thing about working on a movie is because your job is never really finished, so you're always thinking about what you could improve and what you could change or how that might fit together with another piece. And yeah, that's really informed my creative process, I think, for sure. That's
Yeah.
what one of the things I'm most grateful for taking from film was that like you start with this, especially when you're creating something new, because you start in a movie, you'd be like, well, what is this most like this new thing we're going to do? And then you'll start with, some film or book or a couple things that have like an element there's like a jumping off point for you. It's kind of like
Yeah.
this and that movie. You know what I mean? Like definitely with this book, I'm looking at things like I said, Galaxy Quest, and how that film worked. And
Mm-hmm.
if I poured my ideas into a container shaped like Galaxy Quest, what would that look like?
That helps inform people. I mean, it's tough because you want to tell people like you should read this comic because it's a good story and the art's great and it's humor and a little bit of everything. But to get that thing into somebody's head that maybe isn't so comic versed in comics, it's like, oh, it's got that kind of meta commentary that Galaxy Quest does, or like you said, Tropic Thunder, which is one of the funniest movies ever. So I think it's good to have those kind of things where you talk about a more broader influence, something that speaks to, possibly millions of people who've seen those movies in a way.
Yeah, totally. Well, like then it's sort of like it just gets the conversation going. If you have a lot of just for film, it's important so that people get an idea of the tone you're going for, or at least a jumping
Hmm.
off point for it, and then you can be like, well, ours is going to be, you know, a couple inches this way compared to that, or
Yeah.
yes, it kind of can help you, figure out why yours is different than that, and so on, or what you need to add or take away, that kind of thing. Yeah. So really, it's
Yeah.
collaboration in film really helped me learn about how to talk about my work and be critical about it without the stress. Like I don't being in film has made me less sensitive about um, criticism. I'm kind of like,
Hmm.
if I read a bad review of my thing, it doesn't really bother me. Like if someone, but if especially depends what the criticism is. If it's something I agree with, then I probably will be annoyed by that a little bit. But like, oh, they were right about that, you know. But generally, it's helped me be kind of thick-skinned, I guess, which is good for an artist, I feel.
Yeah. I think for any creative, it's definitely good. Especially how we exist in a world where anybody can go on the internet and say anything about anybody's work and they will have an audience by default, unfortunately.
Yeah, sure, but it doesn't. I don't know. When I'm sitting around with my friends, I talk trash too. So
Sure.
I don't do that publicly, but that's part. I mean, I try to be understanding about that. Not really too sensitive.
Yeah, I get it. But I think the thing is, one of the big differences is when you're sitting around with friends or you're on the phone with a friend and you're talking trash. The rest of the world is an eavesdrop. They aren't partial to that conversation.
Which is why I'm so boring on social media. I'm not interested in controversy.
For anybody that's interested in this comic, I will say, if you love comics, there's an added kind of layer to it. If you're looking for a good story and you're not that deep into comics history, you're still going to enjoy this book. And it's out September 2nd with Image Comics.
Yes, Skybound Image. Yep, Image second, and yeah, I'm sure it'll be your new favorite comic, and you'll tell all your friends and all the rest.
Yes, and there's multitude of variant covers on all different levels. I know there's open order and there's some ratio variants and stuff like that. So look to your LCS to order it. But Steve, before you lose power and everything, thank you so much for being here. And after the series is done, let's do it again.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for the next thing. Nice chatting with you, Dave.
Yeah.
Sorry about my being a Luddite. It's the thing burnt down really quick. It was like 60%. Now we're like, I don't update very much. So
we got in just around an hour. So
we did it.
Yeah, we did it. Thanks for watching, and thank you to Steve for his time, as well as thank you to Nathan from Skybound from helping put this together. I had a great time talking to Steve, and I'm down to do it when the series is finished up and we can talk about it with full spoilers. I didn't really know that this book was coming out, and when it was sent to me, I had a blast reading it. And if you trust my taste, I think you'll really enjoy this book. You can also check out some of his other past books. Clobber in Time's fantastic. Post Americana's fantastic. Maestros, which I haven't read, but I've heard really good things about it. And then obviously, The Matrix. You know these things. Anyway, for me, if you could do a couple of things that would really help out this podcast, you hit the like button, you could comment, you could rate or review it on whatever platform you're listening to, and you could subscribe. If you're watching this for the first time and you're not familiar with me, you can see past interviews like Danny Warren Johnson, like Geof Darrow, like Geof Darrow's daughter, Alice Darrow. Tons of great interviews. It's what I love doing. I love talking to people about art and comics. I have a Patreon. You saw the commercial during the interview. $5 a month will get you access to a ton of exclusive videos from both channels. The link is in the description below. You can also buy books from me on West Coast Wednesday, my claim sale on the West Coast Davengers channel, or you could just visit westcoastdavengers.com. I have tons of books in my web store up there. I love doing this. I appreciate you being here. Your support is not something I take for granted, and it's not something I take lightly. So I'll see you next week for another great interview and another great episode of Direct Edition. Peace. Peace. Why do I have to say peace? Bye-bye.